Fugitive match confirmed.
The whistle blew too loud for a Wednesday morning, slicing through the crisp Mississippi air like it knew something nobody else did. Coach Ty Madden didn't flinch, he never did, but the cop watching from the edge of the field had already made the call. In less than 3 hours, a matchstick from Ty's past would strike the flame that could burn down everything he'd built. A revered high school football coach in rural Mississippi is nominated for a prestigious state educator award, thrusting him into a spotlight that triggers a background DNA check meant to verify applicants. The results connect him to a decades-old, unsolved gang murder in Chicago. Now, as media attention grows and a retired Chicago detective smells unfinished business, Coach Ty must protect his family, face what he ran from, and confront the buried self he thought he left behind. But someone else from that cold night in 1987 has also been waiting, and they're ready to talk. Before we get into the case file, just a quick note. If stories of hidden motives, dead ends, and unexpected turns are your thing, make sure you're subscribed. Hit the bell so the next mystery finds you first. Now, let's open the file. The roar of the bleachers echoed like war drums as the Benton High Panthers jogged toward the locker room, cleats clapping hard against the concrete tunnel. "Hydrate, breathe, eyes up, we ain't done," Coach Ty Madden said, voice firm but level. The boys nodded, winded and sweating, but fired up. 21-7. Defense held strong. Offense still had work. But they were holding the line. Ty's office, at the rear of the locker room, smelled like leather and old victories. He kept its simple photos of past teams, a Bible open to Proverbs, a laminated quote from his late mama pinned to the wall. God sees what man buries. He peeled off his headset, reached for the Gatorade bottle on his desk, and exhaled. The door creaked behind him. "Coach?" It was Micah, the sophomore QB, with something to prove and parents breathing down his neck. There is skin if you want to say something to the cameras. They got Channel 4 out there. Coach Ty glanced at the hallway mirror. The years had put silver in his beard and weight in his shoulders, but his eyes were still sharp. He wiped sweat from his forehead. "Not tonight, son. Let him cover the boys. Game's theirs." Micah nodded and left, relieved. Ty reached into the drawer, pulled out a small, worn-out photo. 4 black boys, Chicago skyline behind them. One with a chipped tooth smiling too wide. One with a baseball bat. One holding a Walkman. And Ty Young, lean and hard-eyed. That picture hadn't seen daylight in years. He stared at it too long, heard the whistle too late. The game ended in a win. The field glowed under the floodlights, and parents packed up their folding chairs while cheerleaders clutched pom-poms like medals. Ty stood at the 50-yard line, arms crossed, pride written across his face, until he spotted a white Crown Vic idling near the fence line. The driver didn't belong, not to Benton, not to the South. A dark-skinned man in a crisp coat and northern eyes, watching, not moving. Ty's jaw tightened. "Daddy," a small voice called. A little girl in pigtails sprinted across the field, clutching a stuffed tiger. "I lost my glove." Ty scooped her up. "We'll find it, baby." But he was already scanning the fence again. The Crown Vic was gone. 3 days later, in Jackson, at the State Education Board office, a woman in tortoise-shell glasses stared at her screen. "Huh," she muttered, adjusting her scarf. "That single quotes S. not right." She clicked Recheck DNA Submissions algorithm. Ran again. Same result. Coach Ty didn't sleep that night. He never did after a big win, not since he'd started coaching. The silence afterward always felt too loud. Like the field still echoed, but only in his chest. He sat out on the back porch of his small ranch-style home outside Benton, a soft Mississippi hum in the air, frogs, crickets, distant dog barks, and wind playing through pines. He sipped slowly from a chipped coffee mug that said, "Number 1, Dad. It's paint peeling from too many washes." Across from him, porch light hitting her honey-brown cheeks just right, sat his wife, Patrice, reading, legs tucked under her in a worn house robe, highlighter poised like a weapon over a crime novel. "Game was good," she said, without looking up.
You thought it was buried.
If you want the real story of what happened at that warehouse, I'm still here.
Next time, I don't miss.
She didn't push. Patrice never did, unless it mattered. That was her gift. She let silence do the asking. Ty watched their daughter, Zoe, through the window inside, sleeping sideways across her bed, stuffies and chaos. Then, finally, he said, "Someone was there tonight. Didn't belong." Patrice looked up. "Police?" "No." He shook his head. "Not local. North. He knew me, though. Watched me the whole second half." She didn't ask how he knew. She just asked, "You think it's time?" He didn't answer. By Tuesday, news had spread like gospel through the school hallways and local news feeds. Coach Trey Maddox nominated for Mississippi Educator of the Year. The staff flooded his office with hugs, praise, and too many store-bought cupcakes. Even Principal Givens dropped by with a rare, toothy grin. "You deserve this, Ty, the way you turned that program around. Hell, you've done more for these boys than half their daddies." Ty smiled, grateful but cautious. Praise had a price. And the media calls started too. Channel 4 wanted a full interview. The Jackson Free Press requested a quote and photo. One reporter emailed asking about background info for our nominee profile. And that was the problem. Background. He stared at his inbox. The cursor blinked like a ticking bomb. 400 miles away, retired CPD Detective Alonzo Pierce stood in his South Side apartment with a glass of scotch in one hand and the reopened case file in the other. The Maddox case. Cold since '87. A warehouse murder gang-related. 4 suspects. 1 dead. 2 did time. 1 vanished, Trey Maddox. Street name, Stone. Disappeared during cleanup. Witnesses feared him. Case faded. Until now. He flipped through the printout from Mississippi's Education Department. DNA match. Partial but strong. The nominee's name? Trey Maddox. Pierce knew a name change when he saw one. He'd seen plenty. He picked up the phone. "This is Detective Alonzo Pierce. I'd like to speak to someone about cold case 48733B, the Trey Maddox case." "Sir, that file's sealed." "I know, but I got movement, and I want in. He's alive. And he's in Mississippi." Wednesday morning at school, Ty found a single white envelope in his mailbox. No name, no return. Just 3 printed words. "You thought it was buried." Inside was a copy of the nomination article and a photo of him. Chicago, 1987. Wearing the same leather jacket he'd burned in a trash barrel 30 years ago. The envelope sat on the desk like it had weight. Ty didn't touch it again after that first look. He didn't need to. He knew exactly what that photo meant. Whoever sent it wasn't guessing. They knew who he was, who he used to be. And they were saying, "I see you now." At 6:15 a.m., Ty stepped into the weight room like he did every morning, turning on the overhead fans and flipping the lights with the same rhythm he'd had for years. Clank, clank. Iron hit iron behind him, early bird seniors getting in reps before class. He greeted them with a nod, but his heart was miles away. Back in a freezing Chicago alley. Back when Trey Stone Maddox was 17 and thought a gun was protection instead of a curse. He opened his office drawer. The envelope was still there, unopened now, though he'd read every word and memorized the photo down to the creases. He made a decision. Quiet, final. Later that afternoon, Patrice stood behind the kitchen island, chopping onions, jazz humming from the Bluetooth speaker. Ty came in, kissed her cheek, and said the 3 words he hadn't said in over a decade. "I need cash?" She froze. "How much?" she asked without looking up. 2,000, small bills, from the house fund. Patrice turned, eyes locked on his. Ty ... Is it them? He hesitated, jaw tight. Not them, but someone who knows that night. You running? She asked, voice a whisper. No, he said. But I need to be ready if someone tries to make me disappear for real. She didn't say anything, just nodded, and walked to the laundry room, where they kept an old tin behind the dryer. That night, across the state in Jackson, a woman named Lydia Cobb sat, cross-legged on her couch, surrounded by newspaper clippings, old interview transcripts, and scanned files. She was a freelance crime reporter, but only when it mattered. And the story unfolding now? It mattered. She typed out a lead. How does a man go from suspected gang killer to Mississippi's most beloved coach? She had questions. Why did his record stop after 1991? Why was his original identity never fully confirmed? Why were there sealed documents surrounding the original murder? She clicked a tab open Chicago Tribune archives and typed, Maddox, Trey plus 1987 plus warehouse plus murder. 3 articles, 1 photo. Same photo that had been sent to Ty. She stared at his eyes, young, angry, caged. And the background? A wall covered in blood, and a single chalk outline on the floor. She knew the case. Everyone on the South Side did. But now, she knew the story wasn't over. Meanwhile, in Chicago, Detective Alonzo Pierce clicked open an old voicemail saved on his flip phone. The voice was hoarse, rushed, male, black. If you want the real story of what happened at that warehouse, I'm still here, but not for long. Click. No name, just a trace number linked to Benton County, Mississippi. Thursday morning, Ty parked his truck behind the school instead of in his usual spot. Paranoia hadn't touched him in years, but now it was sitting in his passenger seat. He walked the hallways like he was carrying something fragile inside his chest. Kids clapped his back. Teachers waved. Parents emailed praise. But all he could hear was that voice from 1987. Nah, Stone, we don't walk away from blood. We finish what we start. The past had a scent, and he could smell it again, gunpowder, sweat, brick dust, and fear. He found Principal Givens in the cafeteria. Something wrong? Givens asked, adjusting his glasses. I need a few days, Ty said. You sick? Something's come up. Personal. Givens studied him. You disappearing? Ty didn't blink. No, sir. Just tightening the fences. That night, back on the porch, Ty stared at the stars while Zoe snored on his chest. He whispered to her sleeping face, You don't ever have to know who I was, baby. I buried him for you, but something in the woods cracked. Twigs, movement. He stood slowly, laid Zoe down on the couch behind him, and grabbed the old Louisville slugger he kept by the door. He stepped into the yard, quiet, ready. Nothing, and he saw it, nailed to the nearest pine tree with a rusted roofing nail. Another envelope. Inside, a newspaper clipping. A headline. Teen escapes police raid. 3 dead. A scribbled note beneath it. You ran once. Try it again. The rusted nail still trembled in the bark. Ty stared at the clipping under porch light, hands steady but cold. 3 dead. He remembered each of them. Curtis Lil Flame Watson, shot twice in the back. Dandra Tick Evans, burned in the blast. And DeMarco Lowe, the one who bled out screaming, it wasn't supposed to go like this, before the sirens ever came. Ty had run through that night so many times in his head, It played like muscle memory. But whoever was sending these notes, they were pulling him backward, step by step, like he was being marched to a grave he never finished digging. He pocketed the envelope and looked out toward the tree line. "Show yourself," he muttered. Nothing moved but wind through pine needles. By the time Friday hit, Patrice knew he wasn't going to work. He sat at the kitchen table, clutching the coffee mug with both hands like it was something he could anchor himself to. Zoe was off at school. The house was quiet. Patrice, still in her robe, leaned in the doorway. "You know this can't go on long," she said gently. "I know. You disappear, they'll know something's up. The school, the town, the parents." He nodded. "You're not Trey anymore, baby." He looked up at her, eyes sunken but dry. "Somebody disagrees." She crossed the room, kissed the crown of his head, then whispered, "Then find out who they are before they do worse." Detective Pierce was already in Mississippi. He hadn't told the local PD, not yet. He didn't trust them. Benton was quiet, like most southern towns on the surface. One main street, one barber shop, and a high school football program that was more religion than sport. Pierce parked near the county courthouse and unfolded a printed map. Paper maps still felt more honest than GPS. He circled the address he got from an anonymous tip, "Where Trey Maddox sleeps." It was a small red rancher, half hidden behind trees, peaceful, ordinary, like all lies dressed in suburbia. Pierce checked the glove box. Tucked beside his badge was a manila folder. Photos, fingerprints, court documents, and the photo, the same one someone else had sent. He didn't know who else was sniffing this trail, but he was damn sure not the only one. He adjusted his tie and started the car. At 2:17 p.m., Ty's phone buzzed. Unknown number, Mississippi area code. He answered, jaw tense. "Yeah?" A male voice answered low, raspy, like someone who smoked regrets. "Stone, who is this? You already know. If this is about, you killed the wrong one that night. And you left me behind. You left me. Silence. You still walking around with a clean name like you a pastor know. Meanwhile, I got shrapnel in my spine and nightmares you gave me." Ty swallowed. "Where are you?" "Close, watching. Click." Ty stared at the phone until the screen dimmed. That voice. He hadn't heard it since they were running down that alley behind the warehouse. Marlon Dace. Low Jack. The lookout. The one who was supposed to watch the street while the job went down inside. He'd been arrested that same night, but the record said he died a year later in prison. Clearly, they were wrong. That evening, Ty didn't eat. Patrice watched him lace up his old boots, pull a hoodie over his broad shoulders, and kiss her on the cheek. "If I'm not back in an hour, call Cedric." Her brother, the only man who knew pieces of the past. A former Marine with a temper and a hunting rifle. Ty left through the back door, cutting across the field, walking deeper into the woods behind the house. It was barely dusk, but shadows stretched like fingers. 50 yards in, something caught his eye, a flicker of metal. A car. An old Buick Skylark, half sunk in dirt and moss, like it had been buried by time. Vines wrapped the tires. Windshield cracked like ice. The trunk was cracked open. Ty looked around. Listened. He approached slowly. Inside, beneath a tarp and rotted gym bags, was a cassette tape, labeled in red Sharpie. For Stone. He took it, looked around again. He didn't notice the Polaroid until he shut the trunk. Taped to the glass was a photo of Zoe, at recess, laughing. Unaware, the note underneath said, "Next time I don't miss." Ty stood there a long time, cassette in one hand, Polaroid in the other. The woods around him so still, it felt like the earth itself was holding its breath. The picture of Zoe wasn't just a threat, it was proof. Proof someone had been close. Close enough to snap that photo. Close enough to see her face. close enough to know exactly where to strike if they wanted to. He slipped the photo into his jacket pocket, heart pounding like a slow drumbeat. The cassette tape felt heavier than plastic should. By the time he made it back to the house, Patrice was waiting in the kitchen, Cedric already there, loading rounds into a Taurus judge like he was back on active duty. "You get eyes on who did it?" Cedric asked without looking up. "No," Ty said, setting the cassette on the counter. "But they've been close. Watching Zoe. Might have been near the school." Patrice's voice cracked. "Did they touch her?" "No. He showed her the picture, but they wanted me to know they could." She covered her mouth, turned away. Cedric snapped the cylinder shut. "Time to go hunting." "Not yet," Ty said. "They want a reaction. I need to know what they want first." He held up the cassette. And this might be the start. Ty didn't own a tape player. Not anymore. But there was one at the school, an old Panasonic boombox in the AV closet, probably last used when Clinton was in office. He waited until after hours, snuck in through the side door with a hoodie pulled low, and used his keys to unlock the media room. The boombox sat on a dust-covered shelf like it had been waiting. Ty popped in the tape, pressed play. Click, hiss, then a voice. "You listening, Trey?" "I figured you would be. Ain't many of us left now, huh?" The voice was unmistakable. Marlon Dace, low jack, alive, angry. "You don't remember everything about that night. But I do. I was the one bleeding out in the cop van while they laughed. I was the one they blamed you for. Said you left me. And you did, didn't you?" Static buzzed. "But that ain't the worst part. The worst part is you got out. Changed your name. Built a life on top of bones. And I stayed in the dark. Crippled. Broke. Rotting. A long pause. Breathing. I should kill you. But I'm giving you a chance instead. Not for you. For her. Your daughter, Zoe. Pretty girl. She deserves the truth. Don't you think?" Ty pressed pause. The rage hit hard and hot, like someone lit a match in his ribs. He rewound 10 seconds. Pressed play again. She deserves the truth. That wasn't a threat. That was bait. Detective Pierce sat in a dim motel room on the edge of Benton, swirling whiskey in a plastic cup while cold case files sat fanned across the table. He'd heard rumors for years about witnesses who disappeared, evidence that got lost, names that didn't make sense. But this one? This was different. Too many threads leading right back to that one job in '87. A warehouse robbery that turned into murder. A name that vanished from every database like God erased it by hand. Now that name had turned up in the mouth of Mississippi football royalty. His phone vibrated. A text from a restricted number. "You looking for Stone? Better look deeper. You don't know who protected him." Pierce stared at it, then picked up the manila folder. Inside was a sealed juvenile court record partially redacted. Stamped. Unsealed only under federal order. Pierce frowned. What had been buried so deep it took federal ink to keep it dead? At home, Ty sat in the garage with the tape playing again. Patrice stood in the doorway, arms folded, quiet. When the tape ended, she asked one question. "Did you really leave him there?" He closed his eyes. "I didn't know he was still breathing." "I swear it." She nodded slowly. "But you ran." "I ran." The air sat heavy between them. Then she said something that chilled him more than any threat. "He ain't just after revenge, Ty. He wants you to admit it. That you didn't just change your name. You stole a life that was never supposed to be yours." Ty looked at her. "He wants my legacy, my name, my family." Patrice stepped closer. "Then don't let him take it." That night, in the woods behind the school, Marlon Dace knelt beside the dugout hole where he'd buried the third envelope. He placed another photo in it, one of Coach Ty shaking hands with a local politician. He grinned, tooth missing, left eye cloudy from an old scar. Then he whispered into the dark. Tick, tick, stone. The storm came in slow. Dark clouds rolled in over Benton, like they'd been summoned, swallowing the horizon in a slate-gray hush. The first low thunder growled just as the final bell rang at Benton High. Ty stood at the edge of the parking lot under the awning, watching Zoe hop into Petrus's car. He gave a small wave. She waved back, all smile and pigtails unbothered, untouched by the war building in her father's world. But Ty wasn't waving for goodbye. He was making sure she got out before anything happened, before anyone else showed up, before he stepped fully back into the hell he tried to leave behind. Detective Alonzo Pierce parked across from the Benton County Historical Society, not because he cared about the past, but because the building shared a wall with the city records office. Inside, the clerk looked half bored, half asleep. She didn't blink when Pierce flashed his retired badge. "I'm looking for sealed property transfers in the name of Maddox between 1991 and 1993. Land purchases, school board activity, anything touching the juvenile justice program." She clicked her gum, then typed. After a pause, her eyes narrowed. "There's a flag on this search. Says restricted access state sealed per federal injunction." Pierce's stomach dropped an inch. He pulled a crisp 50 from his coat pocket and slid it across the counter. "I'm not here to break laws," he said. "Just trying to find a missing piece of a bad story." The woman hesitated, took the bill. "Let me print something." "But you didn't get it from me." Meanwhile, Ty met Cedric behind the church, under the old basketball hoop where the net hung like a torn memory. They sat on crates, wind pushing dead leaves across the pavement. "I need you to dig up something," Ty said low. "Back in '88, after I got out the state home, but before I came down south, there was a name change, not legal, through someone in the system, sealed by a court assistant named Belinda Grice." Cedric frowned. "Why?" "Because Marlon ain't working alone. Somebody helped keep my past quiet, and somebody's been feeding him now." "You think it's Belinda?" "I think she's dead, but her files aren't." Cedric nodded slowly. "I still got a guy at juvenile corrections. He owes me. I'll call tonight." Ty tapped his foot. "I've been clean 30 years. See, not a single gun, not a single lie. But if he touches Zoe—" Cedric didn't let him finish. He reached into his coat, pulled out a sealed envelope. "Got you something from an old friend," he said. Ty opened it. Inside was a photo. Marlon, standing beside a man Ty hadn't seen in 3 decades. Detective Claude Heller, CPD, now retired. The man who arrested them back in '87. The man who swore he'd bury the case if Ty gave him names. Ty never did. But Heller vanished from Chicago a year later. Now he was in Mississippi. That night, Lydia Cobb sat in her apartment in Jackson, laptop glowing in the dark, files splayed out around her like puzzle pieces. She'd mapped everything Ty's teaching records, the nomination press releases, the warehouse murder details, and now the transfers. The name Belinda Grice appeared in 3 documents. But one stood out, a juvenile case with the name Maddox. Trey had been replaced with Madden Tyrell via sealed amendment, and next to it, Judge C. Heller, substitute. She squinted. Heller, not a judge. He was CPD. Her phone buzzed. A new email. No subject. No sender. Attached was a file labeled Warehouse, 4th suspect confirmed. She opened it. A video. Grainy. Security footage from the night of the murder. 4 figures, masks on. But one man, on the far end, limping body half tilted. The limp matched the man she'd just seen leaving the woods in Benton on her hidden camera. Marlon Dace. She sat back, stunned. The 4th man wasn't dead. And he had proof. Ty lay awake in bed, eyes open in the dark, arm draped protectively over Patrice. He hadn't told her about the tape's full content. He hadn't told her about Heller, or the CPD cover-up, or how Marlon got out. He'd built their life on one foundational lie, that the past could stay dead if you buried it deep enough. But now the past was digging him up, and Marlon wanted more than revenge. He wanted legacy, to rewrite what was written, to replace Ty, to burn the house and build it in his own name. Outside, thunder cracked like gunfire, and Ty whispered to the dark, "Then we're going to see who bleeds first." The church basement had always been a place of safety. Generations of Benton's black community passed through those doors: baptisms, funeral dinners, fish fries, voter drives. But tonight, the folding chairs and old choir robes bore witness to something heavier. Ty sat at the long metal table with Patrice beside him, Cedric across, and Pastor Howard pacing slow near the rusted file cabinet in the back. On the table, a printed dossier Cedric had brought from his contact at juvenile corrections. Marlon Dace wasn't just alive. He had walked out of Angola prison 10 years ago under a fake death certificate signed by none other than Detective Claude Heller. A fake body was cremated. A name was scrubbed. The man who'd sworn to bring justice for the warehouse murder had instead erased the most volatile suspect and planted him like a landmine. Why? Patrice asked. Why would Heller hide him? Cedric flipped another page. Because Marlon made a deal. He agreed to flip on someone else in the system. But that person died before trial. So Heller kept Marlon buried until now. Ty sat back, fingers steepled, rage tightening in his chest. He kept Marlon alive because he knew I had a new life, he said. Let him out like a dog, knowing I had something to lose. Pastor Howard stopped pacing. Then this is spiritual warfare, brother, not just flesh and blood. Ty gave him a tight smile. Then let me fight both. Elsewhere, inside a cheap motel near the county line, Marlon Dace stood in front of the mirror, watching his reflection like it might betray him. The scar across his cheek twisted when he smiled. He slipped on a new shirt plain, buttoned down, same shade Ty wore in the school nomination photo. The plan was simple. Take his life, one piece at a time, one reputation, one secret, one friend. Then, finally, his daughter. But not by force, by truth. He pulled out an old, dog-eared envelope. Inside, a page torn from a journal. It had blood on the edge and 3 names scribbled in childish print. Trey, Marlon, DeMarco. He lit a match and held the corner to flame. The names curled and blackened. Marlon whispered to the fire, "Stone dies tonight." That same night, in Jackson, Lydia Cobb uploaded her article draft to a private folder labeled Truth Embargoed. She stared at the headline. From Maddox to Madden, the unburied past of Mississippi's Coach of the Year. Her hands hovered over the publish button. She knew what would happen. This wasn't just a story. It was an earthquake. But she had one more call to make. She dialed the number she found from an old press release Coach Ty's personal cell. It rang 4 times. Then he picked up. "Who is this?" "Lydia Cobb, journalist, Jackson Free Press. I know about Heller. I know about the name change. I know Marlon's alive." Ty didn't respond. She softened her voice. "I'm not here to ruin your life. But if you want to control the story, you need to talk now. Because once someone else presses publish, you won't get that chance." A long pause. Then Ty said, "Meet me tomorrow. Benton, noon, at the train tracks off Deer Hollow Road." He hung up. Patrice leaned against the doorframe, arms folded. "You trust her?" "No." "Then why meet her?" "Because the lie's bleeding through the walls now. If I don't speak, Marlon will speak for me." That next morning, a text came through Ty's phone just before sunrise. Unknown number. "She's not safe at school today. Take that how you want." No name, no threats, just that. Ty jumped from bed, heart hammering, already grabbing keys. Patrice sat up, alarmed. What? Zoe, he barked. They're going for Zoe. Ty arrived at Benton Elementary 7 minutes later. The sun was still low, painting long shadows across the playground. Kids were still arriving, and the crossing guard waved half asleep as Ty pulled up fast onto the sidewalk. He didn't park. He ran, straight to the main office. The secretary looked up, startled. Coach? My daughter, Zoe Madden. What room? Room 104. Miss Stanley's class. What's? He was already gone, feet pounding tile like war drums. He threw open the classroom door, scaring a dozen children, including Zoe, who dropped her crayon. But she was fine. Alive, safe. Eyes wide. Ty let out a shuddered breath. Daddy? She whispered. He crossed the room and knelt, pulling her into a hug so tight the teacher looked concerned. I got you, he whispered. Always. Then he noticed the substitute teacher standing in the corner. Thin, light brown, familiar. The man's smile was cold. Ty stood slowly. His heart stopped. Coach Madden, the man said. Sorry if I scared you? I'm just filling in today. Name's Jack Marlin. He extended a hand. Ty didn't move. The room spun. The children stared. Marlin winked. Nice to see you again, Stone. Ty didn't take the hand. He didn't blink, didn't move, didn't breathe. Everything all right, Coach? The real Miss Stanley asked, stepping back into her own classroom with a clipboard in hand and confusion on her face. I just left for Wait. Who is? But the man calling himself Jack Marlin was already gone. The door shut behind him, soft as smoke. Ty bolted after him, chest tight, down the hallway into the open courtyard, but the man had vanished like mist into the morning crowd. No security guard had logged a visitor. No staff had seen him enter. No camera outside room 104 had been working. The hard drive had been under maintenance since 6 a.m. He planned every second. Ty clenched his fists. He'd let this stretch too far. This wasn't cat and mouse anymore. This was a trap, and Zoe had just been the bait. By noon, Ty sat on the edge of the train tracks off Deer Hollow Road, just like he told Lydia Cobb. The rusted rails hissed with heat. Cicadas screamed in the woods nearby. A church bell clanged faintly in the distance, like a funeral was being called for somebody. Maybe him. Her car pulled up slow. A rental. Lydia stepped out with a recorder in her hand and a notepad tucked under her arm. She wasn't dressed like a trapper or a hunter, just someone tired of false stories. Before you ask, she said, I'm not here to ambush you. Good, Ty replied. Because I'm not in the mood to get buried twice. They sat across from each other on a fallen log. She pressed the recorder between them. You want me to turn it off? No, leave it on. You sure? Ty looked out toward the tree line. Nothing stays off forever. Ty told her everything, not in bullet points, not in cleaned-up sound bites, but the real story. How he grew up in the projects off Roosevelt and Central Park. How DeMarco Lowe was like a brother. How Curtis and Dandra ran with them. How Marlin was the only one with a father mean drunk, but present, and how that made him different, harder, more dangerous. How the job was never supposed to be violent. How they were supposed to get in, scare a rival crew, trash the stash, and send a message. But how that night went wrong. How one of them brought a real gun. How DeMarco tried to talk it down. How someone Ty still didn't know who pulled the trigger first. Then came the fire. Then came the screaming. Then came Marlin, dragging Ty out by the jacket before they were both swallowed in smoke. But Ty had made a choice. He ran. Left Marlin bleeding in the stairwell. Ran 5 miles, changed shirts in a dumpster, behind a corner store, and never looked back. Heller found him a week later. You want to vanish, the detective had said. You give me everything you got. I make you someone else. But once you're gone, you're gone. Ty gave up names. Not the crews, just rival players. Just low-level bangers. Just enough to get Heller what he wanted. And in return, a new name, a sealed record, a bus ticket to Jackson. Lydia didn't interrupt, didn't write. Just sat there with the tape rolling and the weight in her eyes. When he finished, she asked one question. If I run this story, what happens to your daughter? Ty looked at her. That's why you're not going to run it. Yet, he pulled an envelope from his coat and handed it to her. What's this? Everything you don't have yet. The file Cedric found. The court amendment. Marlon's prison records. And proof Heller's still alive and hiding in a trailer home 3 miles outside Benton under the name Carl Ellison. Lydia's eyes widened. You're giving me a bigger story. I'm giving you the real story. And what do you want in return? Ty's jaw tightened. Time. A few days. I need to end this my way. Lydia nodded slowly. Then end it. That night, Ty drove alone to a storage unit on Highway 90, the one he hadn't touched in years. The one under a different name, paid in cash, no digital trace. Inside was a plastic bin marked Tools. He opened it. Inside, a burner phone, a faded map of Benton County, and an old photograph, the 4 of them standing in front of the warehouse. One of the faces dandruff had been burned out. Ty stared at it for a long time, then picked up the phone and dialed the only number on the burner. It rang once. Then Marlon answered. You ready to talk like men now? No, Ty said. I'm ready to bury you like I should have that night. A pause. Then come find me, Stone, but don't bring a shovel. Bring fire. The next morning was too still. Not peaceful. Just expectant. The kind of stillness that makes dogs bark at nothing and birds vanish from trees. Ty stood at the edge of the pines near Sugar Mill Creek, boots heavy in the soft earth, the burner phone cold in his pocket, the Beretta tucked behind his back. Marlon had sent coordinates via text. 1 mile past the broken mill wheel. Come alone, no lies. Ty didn't answer, just put Zoe on the school bus himself. Hugged her longer than usual. Told Patrice, don't leave the house. Don't open the door for anyone but Cedric. He didn't say goodbye, but part of him felt like it might be the last time. Sugar Mill Creek wasn't on any modern map. It used to be a logging settlement in the 1930s before fire took the last of the homes. All that remained now were concrete steps leading to nowhere and the rusted skeleton of the mill wheel, tilted in the mud like a broken jawbone. Ty moved with careful steps through brush and oak, heart calm but eyes sharp. Marlon wouldn't kill him here. No, that wasn't his style. Marlon wanted a reckoning, not an execution. And then he saw it, the clearing, a crude folding chair, a small fire pit, flames still flickering orange. And Marlon Dace, seated like a preacher at a funeral, cigarette in one hand, the other resting on his thigh. His left leg trembled, slightly old nerve damage, his right eye cloudy. He grinned. Damn, I half thought you wouldn't come. I'm here. Gun on you? Always. Good, Marlon said. Would have been disrespectful if you didn't. Ty stepped closer. You touched my daughter. I'll bury you where you sit. Marlon waved smoke away. Relax. I was just introducing myself. She's bright, like her mama. Ty's fingers curled. Say her name again, and you won't finish your sentence. Marlon smiled wide, broken tooth glinting. You always were the righteous one, even back then. Playing big brother, making sure DeMarco did his homework, lecturing Tick about skipping school. You remember that? Ty said nothing. Marlon leaned forward. You ever wonder why we really went to that warehouse? What are you talking about? Who gave the tip? Who said the rival crew was in there? Ty paused. It was DeMarco. Marlin shook his head slowly. Nah, brother. It was me. I lied. Ty stepped back slightly, breath catching. You ... what? I wanted the war. Wanted the blood. I hated them. And I knew DeMarco would believe me if I said they killed his cousin. It was all a setup, Stone. Every last part of it. Ty felt heat rise behind his eyes. Then why send me there? Why include me? Marlin's grin faded. Because I needed someone clean. Someone who'd survive and tell the cops a different story if it went wrong. And it did. Silence. Wind moved through the trees like whispers. Ty stepped closer to the fire. You used all of us, he said. Marlin nodded. I did. You let DeMarco die. I killed DeMarco, Marlin said, voice like iron. He turned the gun on me when he figured it out. I shot first. Then I set the fire. Ty's throat clenched. You let me think it was my fault. Marlin stood slowly. Because I wanted to own you, Stone. And I did. For 30 years. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a single piece of paper. Tossed it into the fire. Ty leaned forward. The flames licked the edge. Letters darkened. It was the original CPD report, with Ty's name listed as prime suspect. How'd you get that? Ty asked. Heller. He owed me. He played both of us. Took your name off the books. Gave me a new life underground. Fed me your story piece by piece over the years, watching you rise while I rotted. Marlin stepped even closer, face inches from Ty now. So now we trade, he whispered. I give you the final truth, and you give me what I deserve. Ty frowned. What's that? Marlin reached into his coat and dropped a badge onto the ground. Proof, he said, that Heller wasn't just covering your past. He was working for the people who used us all. And he's still alive. Still protected. Ty stared at the badge. Chicago PD. Tarnished. Blood-specked. And beneath it, a flash drive. What's on it? Ty asked. Marlin smiled. The real warehouse tapes, audio, video, proof that we weren't just 4 stupid kids. We were part of something bigger. Ty narrowed his eyes. And what do you want in return? Marlin's voice dropped low. You walk back into that pretty life of yours, and you say my name. You tell the world what I did. Let them chase me for once. Let me be the story. Ty studied him. And if I don't? Marlin shrugged. Then this little flash drive gets mailed to the state board, and your daughter becomes the girl whose daddy lied his way into her future. A standoff. Then Ty asked, Why now? Marlin looked toward the sky, breath shaky. Because the pain don't sleep anymore, and I'm tired of being the ghost. By the time Ty made it home, the sun was setting. Patrice met him at the porch. Did it end? She asked. Ty handed her the flash drive. No, he said. It just got real. Ty sat in the den, flash drive in one hand, photo of DeMarco in the other. He hadn't touched that photo in 20 years. Hadn't let himself. 4 boys, a cracked basketball court, 1 stolen camera, and a borrowed smile. DeMarco was always in the center laughing with his whole chest, head tilted, hand gripping Ty's shoulder like they were blood. They weren't, but they felt like it. Now the boy in the center was a ghost, and the man who killed him was walking free with the truth in his mouth. Cedric came through the back door like thunder in boots. He dropped a bag of tools by the kitchen table, unzipped it. Inside, gloves, rope, a voice recorder, and something wrapped in wax cloth. You say the word, I'll end this, Cedric muttered. Won't be no trial, no sermon. No more notes taped to trees? Ty didn't even look at the bag. He gave me a flash drive, Ty said. Cedric's brow lifted. What's on it? Video, audio, warehouse footage. All of it. Names, cops, people who covered it up. Cedric let out a low whistle. You sittin' on a nuclear bomb, brother. Ty finally looked at him. "And I've got one shot to use it right." That night, Patrice plugged the drive into her laptop. They watched in silence. No blinking, no breathing. Grainy black and white security footage. Date, October 12, 1987. Time, 11:42 p.m. Location, West 43rd and S. Pulaski, Chicago. It showed everything. 4 black boys breaking in through the side door, flashlights slicing across crates. An argument near the back hallway. Marlon pulling a weapon, DeMarco shoving him. A scuffle, then fire. Screaming, and then Detective Claude Heller stepping into frame from the shadows before police were even called. He was there, watching. And when DeMarco fell, bleeding, Heller stepped over his body, took something from his pocket, a small bag, unmarked, and walked away as the flames grew. Ty paused the video. His hands trembled. "I never saw that," he whispered. "Patrice didn't blink. They used you. They used us all." The next day, Lydia Cobb sat at her desk in Jackson, stunned by what she was seeing on her screen. Ty had sent her the full drive uncut. She called twice. He didn't pick up. But the message with the file was clear. "If I die, you run it. All of it. No edits." That evening, a car pulled up to the edge of a trailer park on the southern fringe of Benton. Ty stepped out, Cedric in the driver's seat with the engine running. Claude Heller lived in a rusting silver Airstream, half sunk in grass. Porch light dangling by its wire. A dog barking 3 trailers down. Ty walked slow. No weapon, just truth. He knocked. The door opened after a minute. Claude Heller looked smaller now. Older, balding, liver spots on his face like ink stains. He froze when he saw Ty. "Well," Heller rasped, "I figured you'd find me eventually." Ty said nothing, just stepped inside. The trailer smelled like whiskey and mothballs. A single chair faced a tiny TV playing the news with no sound. "I ain't sorry," Heller said. "That ain't why I let you in." "You were there before the call," Ty said. Heller nodded. "I was protecting something bigger than you boys. That warehouse belonged to a cop, a dirty one, storing heroin and cash. I was internal affairs, then low level. They sent me to watch it, not stop it. And when we hit it," Ty said, "you had a choice." Heller sat down slow. "I chose my badge. I chose silence. You buried DeMarco." "I buried a mess," Heller said, voice growing thin, "and made a deal with the loudest devil left breathing, Marlon. That boy would have burned every name in the city to stay alive. You let him walk. I thought he'd stay hidden. But pain don't rot like it's supposed to." Ty tossed a folder onto the man's lap. "What's this?" "Closure," Ty said. "Your name, your file, the evidence. Sent to every reporter in Jackson. You've got 3 days before your name hits the news." Heller looked down, pale. "You gonna shoot me?" "No," Ty said. "I want you to watch your legacy die." He turned, opened the door. But before he stepped out, Heller whispered, "You're not clean, boy. You were there too." Ty didn't turn around. "I never claimed I wasn't," he said. "But I stopped running." And then he was gone. Back at home, Patrice was already packing a small overnight bag for Zoe. "Your mama's," she told Ty, "in Hattiesburg. You send her now. She be gone before it gets hot." Ty nodded. Cedric stood by the door. "So what's next?" Ty exhaled. "We ended in the open." "You sure?" "I'm done hiding behind names." He pulled an old notebook from the bottom of his drawer. Inside was a single contact number written in 1994, the number of the last living member of the original crew, Curtis Lil Flame Watson, and he was ready to talk. The phone rang 5 times before someone picked up. Ty stood in the garage, light bulb flickering overhead like a dying heartbeat, notebook in one hand, phone in the other. Static, and a voice. Deep, raspy, older. Who this? It's Stone. A long pause. Not silence, just stillness. Like the past itself had picked up the line. Then, you got some fucking nerve calling me, boy. Ty nodded to himself. Probably do. But I also got something else. Another pause. What? The truth. Curtis Lil Flame Watson lived in a trailer behind a fried catfish spot on the edge of Mobile, Alabama. He ran a detailing business out of his yard and kept a sawed-off under his porch. The last time Ty had seen him was in a courtroom where Curtis pled out and took 10 years for obstruction and conspiracy. He never snitched, never spoke again, disappeared after prison. Now, 38 years later, he opened the screen door slow and eyed Ty like a man deciding between forgiveness and a bullet. You look older, Curtis said. So do you. They shook hands. Firm, not friendly. Inside, the walls were covered in oil paintings. Boats, black saints, smoke-streaked clouds. Curtis painted to quiet the noise, he said. But his hands still trembled. He poured coffee, then whiskey into the coffee. Sat across from Ty at a worn table. You talked to Marlon? He talked to me. Bet he did, Curtis muttered, taking a long sip. He always did have the loudest mouth and the longest memory. I got video now. Footage from that night. Shows everything. Shows Heller was there. Shows the fire. Shows what you tried to stop. Curtis looked away, face folding like tired paper. I didn't want no war, he said. But Marlon, he fed off it. That boy had demons before we even picked up heat. You saw it. We all did. We were just too busy trying to prove we weren't afraid of nobody. I need you to go on record. Curtis flinched. Hell no. You're the only one left who can verify that warehouse was a police stash spot. And what that get me? A bullet? A lawsuit? My name dragged across the same streets I've been trying to forget? Ty leaned forward. It might get you peace, for DeMarco. For what we let happen. Curtis stared at him, silent for a long while. Then he reached into the drawer, pulled out a stained audio recorder. I already told it, 5 years ago, just in case. He slid it across the table. If I give you this, we even. Ty picked it up. We were never even, he said quietly. But this is the closest we'll get. Back in Benton, Lydia Cobb was preparing to go live. She had everything. The warehouse tapes, Heller's sealed records. The flash drive. The interview with Ty. And now Curtis's confession. She poured it all into a single headline for the world to choke on. From fire to cover-up, how a Chicago teen became Mississippi's hero and who helped him vanish. She hit schedule. Story goes live at midnight. Ty drove through the darkness, back toward home, but every mile felt like a countdown. He passed the spot where Marlon had once sent the first envelope, saw the old pine where Zoe's photo had been nailed. And in his chest, something started to crack, not fear. Resolve. Marlon wanted to own the story. But Ty had already handed it to the world. There was nothing left for Marlon to manipulate, nothing left for him to hold hostage. Only one thing remained. Confrontation. At 11:47 p.m., Patrice called Ty's phone. Her voice was shaking. Someone's in the backyard. Where, Zoe? Safe. In Hattiesburg. Lock the door. Don't hang up. She whispered, Ty, he's inside the fence. Ty was already turning the truck around. Headlights cutting through the black. Breath shallow. Eyes wild. He pressed the gas hard as gravel kicked under the tires. From the other end of the line, he heard it. A knock on the window. A voice. Not loud. Not angry. Just steady. You lied, Stone. Click. The call dropped. Ty's truck tore through the night like it had blood to spill. The road home was carved into his memory, but tonight it felt foreign. Every tree a blur. Every turn a scream in the dark. He ran the red light at Miller Street. Didn't slow at the curve near the creek. He called Patrice 3 times. No answer. Each ring sank him deeper into the kind of fear that doesn't live in the gut, but in the spine, in the marrow. He'd been hunted before, by guilt, by memory, by silence. But never like this. Never when love had skin in the game. When Ty reached the house, the porch light was swinging. One bulb busted, the other blinking like Morse code. The front door sat open, just slightly. He stepped out the truck with the Beretta drawn. Knees bent, breath measured, no sound. No Patrice. The hallway smelled like pine cleaner and smoke. He crept through the kitchen, glass broken near the sink. A chair overturned. Patrice's book club mug, Let Black Women Rest, shattered on the tile. Then he heard it, a creak upstairs. Ty moved slow, measured, up the stairs, Beretta raised. Then, "Marlon," he called. No answer. "Marlon, if you touch her, this ain't a story anymore. This is a body count." Still nothing. He turned the corner to their bedroom, and there he was, Marlon, standing by the dresser. Calm, no weapon in sight. Patrice tied to a chair, mouth taped but eyes fierce. Alive, alert, breathing. "I didn't hurt her," Marlon said, voice almost tender. "You know I wouldn't." Ty aimed the gun straight at his chest. "Untie her." Marlon raised both hands slowly. "I just needed her here. Needed you to come back. One last time. Before the story breaks." It already broke. Marlon tilted his head. "What?" Ty nodded. "News drops at midnight. You, Heller, the tapes, Curtis's testimony, everything, the whole world's gonna know." A long silence. Marlon's lip trembled. "You took that from me," he said, voice shaking. "You took my story." "No," Ty said, lowering the gun just slightly. "I gave it back to the truth, the one DeMarco died for." Marlon's face twisted rage, regret, and something smaller behind it. A boy who had once believed violence was the only language he'd ever be heard in. Then he reached into his coat pocket. Ty raised the Beretta again. "Don't," Marlon froze. Then slowly he pulled out a photograph. Zoe, playing in the schoolyard. He laid it on the dresser. "I never meant to hurt her," Marlon said. "I just wanted you to remember who you were before they gave you clean clothes and a Bible verse." "I never forgot," Ty said. "That's why it haunts me." They stood there, 2 men built from the same broken foundation, standing in the ruins of their own mythology. Then Marlon did something that surprised them both. He untied Patrice, stepped back. "She's stronger than both of us anyway," he said. Patrice stood up slow, arms shaking, walked to Ty's side. "Put the gun down," she whispered. Ty hesitated, but then he did. Marlon looked down at the floor. "Tell the world I wasn't just a villain," he said. "Tell them I tried." "You did more than try," Ty said. "You survived." "But surviving don't excuse the damage." Marlon gave a tired nod. Then sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Ty looked out the window. Lydia Cobb's sedan parked at the end of the block. Flashing blue behind it. "Story broke early," Ty muttered. Marlon laughed softly. Of course it did. He turned to Patrice, and for the first time spoke to her. "You're the only reason he ever walked straight. Thank you for keeping him human." She stared at him, eyes sharp. "Human don't mean harmless. You ever come near my daughter again, I'll show you what I buried." Marlon smiled, a sad one. "Fair enough." When the police came in, Ty didn't speak, didn't resist, didn't flinch. Marlon went peacefully, in cuffs, head high, eyes forward. 2 weeks later, the story went national. The warehouse that burned the truth. How police corruption created a ghost and a coach. Lydia Cobb won awards. Refused all interviews. Claude Heller was found dead in his trailer. Gunshot to the chest. No suspects. Some said it was suicide. Others said retribution. Curtis Watson moved to South Carolina. He never painted boats again. Marlon Dace pled guilty to obstruction, arson, and conspiracy to commit murder. He received 15 years. No trial, no appeal. Told the court, "I was born in fire. This is mercy." Ty kept his job for a time, then stepped down. Too much noise. Too many eyes. The school board offered him a chance to stay. He declined. Instead, he started a youth mentoring program in Jackson. For kids with sealed records and stories nobody wanted to hear. What you just heard wasn't the full story. It was the part someone tried to bury. The part that didn't fit the headline. The part where a person, not a suspect, was lost in the process. This case showed us what happens when the system moves too fast, or not at all. When suspicion weighs more than truth. When justice shows up late or never. But here's the thing. If these stories don't leave us asking questions, they'll keep repeating with different names. So if this one meant something to you, don't just move on. Talk about it. Question it. Pass it on. Because silence protects the wrong side of history. And sometimes the only thing standing between truth and erasure is someone who chooses to care. Like, share, comment. Let the next chapter begin with awareness, not regret.